The topic we are going to discuss today is Module 4, Unit 6 of the text Language Skills, entitled Reading. There is a general introduction on reading. What are the different types of reading? Then, what are the barriers to reading? How can you improve the effectiveness of reading? And a last portion on editing and different types of editing. So, this is the portion we are going to deal with today. First of all, what is reading? A definition of reading. How can you define reading? Reading is a complex process that involves perception and thought, combining word recognition and comprehension. Reading is a complex process. Is reading a complex process? Or why reading is a complex process? It is because reading it's a multifaceted process that involves perception and thought, combining the word recognition and comprehension. It involves how we perceive and comprehend ideas. That is the way in which something is understood and interpreted based on our previous knowledge on that particular topic which we are reading. While reading, we comprehend what we have read so far based on our previous knowledge and experience. Thus, reading involves a number of stages that makes reading a complex process. And reading is a highly desirable habit. It helps a person to gather knowledge and also to develop a critical insight. That means critical thinking. Reading helps a person to develop critical thinking. So it is one of the highly desirable habit. So what do you mean by reading? Reading is a complex process that involves perception and thought. We create our own views while reading. Reading is a multifaceted process. Reading is a complex process that involves perception and thought, combining the word recognition and comprehension. There are four main kinds of reading. They are skimming, scanning, extensive reading, and intensive reading. First one is skimming. Skimming is also known as gist reading. Gist reading, it helps in comprehending the text at a basic level. Understanding the overall content may be minimal in this case, but it will help getting a broad overall information about the text. You won't get all the details of the text during skimming, but you will get a broad idea about the text. Example for skimming is, if you go through the newspaper, going through the entire newspaper quickly through the headlines. നമ്മളിപ്പോൾ ഒരു ന്യൂസ് പേപ്പറിൻ്റെ ഹെഡ്ലൈൻസും കൂടെ ഓവറോൾ ആ ന്യൂസ് പേപ്പറിൽ എന്താണെന്ന് നോക്കുന്നു. നമുക്ക് അതിനെ പറ്റിയിട്ട് ഒരു ഓവറോൾ ഐഡിയ കിട്ടുന്നുണ്ടാവും, പക്ഷെ ബ്രോഡായിട്ട് ഫുൾ ഡീറ്റെയിൽസും കിട്ടുന്നുണ്ട്. ദാറ്റ് കൈൻഡ് ഓഫ് റീഡിങ് ഇസ് കോൾഡ് സ്കിമ്മിങ്. വി ആർ ജസ്റ്റ് സ്കിമ്മിങ് ത്രൂ the newspaper in order to get a gist of it. That's called skimming. First one is skimming. Second one is scanning. Scanning is also known as general reading. This kind of reading, this is a reading method to extract particular information. If you go through some encyclopedia and check for a particular information, it is scanning. നമ്മളിപ്പോൾ എൻസൈക്ലോപീഡിയയിൽ ഒരു പർട്ടിക്കുലർ ടോപ്പിക് അല്ലെങ്കിൽ ഒരു പർട്ടിക്കുലർ ഏരിയ ഫോക്കസ് ചെയ്തുകൊണ്ട് വായിക്കുന്നു, അതാണ് സ്കാനിങ്. എക്സാമ്പിൾ, going through the newspaper and searching for a particular information, maybe related to sports or some other news. That kind of a reading is called scanning. And the third one is intensive reading. This kind of reading is also known as, the intensive reading. Third one is intensive reading. It's a kind of focused reading, where reading is done with specific learning tasks that are said to be achieved. Learning oriented reading is called intensive reading, and during this kind of reading we read with complete focus, we read with full concentration. So learning oriented focused reading is called intensive reading. And the fourth one is extensive reading. Extensive reading involves reading large quantity of material, and it can be for pleasure or to develop general reading skill. Extensive reading is wide reading, and this reading is particularly intended to evoke pleasure or to develop general reading skill, to enhance your reading habit. So there are mainly 4 kinds of reading. They are skimming, which it's otherwise called gist reading, then scanning, which is also called general reading, then intensive reading, a kind of focused reading, and the last one is extensive reading. There are also other classification like close reading and interactive reading. Close reading. Close reading is for detailed information where the text is closely scrutinized. And interactive reading, you are all familiar with interactive reading, right? Interactive reading is with the active participation of students. Classroom reading, active participation of the students, which will help to improve the reading process. During this, we attempt to identify the structure, the theme, the content of the reading material, and this kind of reading make reading more effective. So there are other classification like close reading. We scrutinize the text during close reading to get additional details, and other one is interactive reading. Next, what are the barriers to reading? What are the things that hamper us from or prevent us from reading? First one is lack of grammatical and linguistic competence or efficiency. Suppose if we lack knowledge on a particular language, we won't be able to read. If we are not familiar with the structure, vocabulary, grammar of a particular language, we won't be able to read, right? So the first point is lack of grammatical and linguistic competence. Second point is environmental factors like poor lighting. If there won't be a proper or sufficient lighting, we won't be interested, right? Then size of the book. Sometimes the huge size of the book itself prevent from reading that book or choosing that book, and also the font size. If it's not readable, that will also prevent. That will also cause some difficulty in reading, or it will affect our reading interest. Then third one is lack of concentration or motivation to pursue the habit of reading. If you are really interested in reading, but if you don't have the concentration or motivation to pursue the reading habit, then it will hamper your reading. Then fourth one is distraction in the form of visual spectacle easily available on television or internet. Visual spectacle or visually striking performance or display that will distract our focus away from reading. Fourth point you are all familiar with, right? Distraction in the form of visual spectacles. So there are mainly 4 main points. First one is lack of grammatical and linguistic competence. Second one, environmental factors like poor lighting. Then size of the book, font size, etc. Then third one is lack of concentration or motivation. And fourth one is distraction in the form of visual spectacle. These are the major barriers to reading. Then the next point is how can you improve effectiveness? Particularly if it's for academic, the reading is for academic purpose, then how can you improve? How can you read effectively? Well, if you are reading for an academic purpose, you have to bear in mind the purpose of reading first, and won't read randomly. And this requires greater skill at fishing for information from the written word. You have to fish for information which you really want to have, and you should be deliberate upon the arguments developed in the text. We should be able to fish for relevant information from the text we refer, and there should be a reading list. You should keep a reading list. What are the books you have to read? You should first you have to prepare a list of the books which you are going to read, and you have to read critically. You have to read that books critically. You are not supposed to swallow whatever is there in the book. Instead, you have to read with a critical insight. One useful strategy you can adopt for this is SQR3. A useful strategy, SQR3. That means survey, question, read, recall, and review. SQR3. That means survey, question, read, recall, and review. This is the useful strategy you can adopt for improving the effectiveness of reading. And next section is editing. What do you mean by editing? Editing is a process that involves revising the content, grammar, spelling, presentation, and organization of a piece of writing. Editing is a process that involves revising the content. That includes revising grammar, then spelling, presentation, organization, etc. Overall, this is called editing. That means reworking a piece of writing with particular focus. There are different types of editing. First one is structural editing or substantial. Structural editing is otherwise called substantial editing. This is the most intensive form of editing, and this could result in the complete revision of the text. A detailed editing is called structural editing. Second one is copy editing. Copy editing is when the text is checked for errors in grammar, then style, repetition, use of jargon. What do you mean by jargon? Jargon means technical words. There will be medical jargon, terms associated with certain particular profession and all. It's called jargon. So copy editing is when the text is checked for errors. Particularly, we check for errors in grammar, style, repetition, and jargon. And typographical errors are also corrected during copy editing. Sentence structure, correction of sentence structure will also be done during copy editing. Readability of the passage will also be checked during this kind of editing process. First one is structural editing, second one is copy editing. And third one is proofreading. Proofreading, you are all familiar with proofreading, right? Proofreading, it's a simpler form of editing where minor errors in the use of language are corrected. It may be punctuation, spelling, or word usage. Proofreading. Then last one is formatting. Formatting can be done to suit the style of the journal, making changes in the style and structure of the text. Formatting, it's a final stage. നിങ്ങൾക്കറിയാം ഫോമാറ്റ് ചെയ്യുക എന്ന് വെച്ച് കഴിഞ്ഞാൽ നമ്മൾ അതിൻ്റെ മാർജിൻസ്, സ്പേസിങ്, വി വിൽ അഡ്ജസ്റ്റ് ദ സ്പേസിങ് അക്കോർഡിംഗ് ടു ദ സ്റ്റൈൽ ഓഫ് ദ ജേർണൽ. എല്ലാ ജേർണലിലും ഇപ്പം ഒരേ ഫോമാറ്റ് ആയിരിക്കത്തില്ല ഫോളോ. നമ്മൾ എടുത്ത് നോക്കിയാൽ അറിയാം, ചില ജേർണൽസിൽ ചിലപ്പോൾ ഒരു പേജിൽ തന്നെ മിറർ പോലെ 2 സെക്ഷനായിട്ട് പ്രിൻ്റ് ചെയ്തിട്ടുണ്ടാവും. ചിലതിൽ ഡബിൾ സ്പേസിങ് ആയിരിക്കും, ചിലത് സിംഗിൾ സ്പേസിങ് ആയിരിക്കും. സോ വി ഹാവ് ടു format it according to the style of the journal or the style the particular journal follow. This is formatting. We make changes in the style and structure of the text. This is called formatting. So editing, there are different types of editing: structural editing, copy editing, then proofreading, and the last section is formatting. Okay, that's all for today. Thank you. If you have any doubt, feel free to ask. You can either message me or you can call me directly and clear your doubt. Okay, thank you.